So the third question is this: whether it is lawful to resist a ruler who is oppressing or ruining the country, and how far such resistance may be extended, by whom, how, and by right or law it is permitted. For so much as we must here discuss the lawful authority of a lawful ruler, I am confident that this question won't be in the least acceptable to tyrants and wicked rulers. But it's no wonder that those who acknowledge no law but their own whims are deaf to the voice of that law which is grounded upon reason. But I am convinced that the good rulers will willingly listen to this discussion, because they know full well that every magistrate, whatever their rank, are but an embodiment of the law. And even though nothing will convince the bad rulers, this doesn't say anything against the good, since the two are in character diametrically the opposite of each other. Therefore, whatever shall be said against the actions of tyrants by no means detracts anything from the good kings. On the contrary, the more tyrants are shown for their true colors, the more glorious does the true worth and dignity of good kings appear. And neither can the vicious imperfections of the one be laid open without adding perfections in respect to the honor of the other. But as for tyrants, let them say and think what they please. That will be the least of my worries, for it is not to them but against them that I write. I believe good kings will readily consent to that which is propounded, for they ought to hate tyrants and wicked governors just as much as the shepherds hate the wolves, physicians hate poisoners, and the true prophets hate false doctors. For reason infuses into good kings as much hatred against tyrants as nature imprints in dogs against wolves. For as the one lives by looting and pillaging, so the other is born or bred to redress and prevent all such outrages. It may be the flatterers of tyrants will read this and turn up their noses at it, but if they were not all past all grace, they would rather blush with shame. I very well know that the friends and faithful servants of kings will not only consider and approve this argument, but also with their best abilities defend its contents. Accordingly, as the reader shall find himself liking or disliking what we say here, let him know that by that he shall plainly discover either the affection or hatred that he bears to tyrants. Let us now enter into the matter. Kings are made by the people. We have shown before that it is God that appoints and chooses kings, and who give them their kingdoms. Now we say that it is the people who establish kings, put the scepter into their hands, and who with their support approves the election. God would have done it in this manner so that kings should acknowledge that after God they hold their power and sovereignty from the people, and that this would then encourage them to concentrate and direct all their efforts on the benefit of the people without being puffed with any vain imagination that they were created from material more excellent than other men, for which they were raised so high above others, as if they were to command our flocks of sheep or herds of cattle. But let them remember and know that they are made no different than anyone else, raised from the earth by the voice and acclamations of the people, raised as it were on their shoulders to the thrones, that they might afterwards bear on their own shoulders the greatest burdens of the commonwealth. Many ages before that the people of Israel demanded a king. God gave and appointed the law of royal government contained in Deuteronomy 17:14-15. Thou art come unto the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, and shalt possess it, and shalt dwell therein, and shalt say, I will set a king over me, like as all the nations that are about me. Thou shalt in any wise set him whom the Lord thy God shall choose from amongst thy brethren. You see here that the election of the king is attributed to God, but he is established by the people. Now when the practice of this law came into use, let us see in what manner they proceeded. The elders of Israel, who represented the whole body of the people, elders are understood to be the captains, the centurions, the commanders over 50s and 10s, judges, provosts, but principally the chiefest of tribes, came to meet Samuel in Ramah, and not being willing longer to endure the government of the sons of Samuel, whose ill management had justly drawn on them the people's dislike, and also persuading themselves that they had found the means to make their wars hereafter with more advantage. They demanded a king of Samuel, and Samuel asked counsel of the Lord, who made known that he had chosen Saul for the governor of his people. Then Samuel anointed Saul and performed all those rites which belonged to the election of a king required by the people. Now this might perhaps have seemed sufficient if Samuel had presented to the people the king who was chosen by God, and had admonished them to all to become good and obedient subjects, notwithstanding to the end that the king might know that he was established by the people. Samuel appointed the elders to meet at Mizpah, where they assembled as if the business of choosing a king had yet to begin and nothing had already been done. In other words, as if the election of Saul hadn't happened yet. 1 Samuel 10:17. The lot was cast and fell on the tribe of Benjamin, then on the family of Matri, and lastly on Saul, born of that family, the same man whom God had chosen. Then by the consent of all the people, Saul was declared king. Finally, so that Saul nor any other might attribute it, the aforesaid business to chance or lot, Saul then made some proof of his valor in raising the siege of the Ammonites in Jabesh Gilead. 1 Samuel 11. At the urging of the people, he was again confirmed king in a full assembly at Gilgal. You see that he whom God had chosen and the lot had separated from all the rest is established king by the support of the people, and for David by the commandment of God, and in the manner more evident than the former. After the rejection of Saul, Samuel anointed for king over Israel David, chosen by the Lord. 1 Samuel 16:13. After that, the Spirit of the Lord left Saul. And instead worked in a special manner in David. But David, despite all this, did not reign, but was compelled to save himself in deserts and rocks, often coming close to the very brink of destruction. In fact, he never reigned as king until after the death of Saul. For then, by the acclamation of all the people of Judah, he was first chosen king of Judah. And 7 years later, by the consent of all Israel, he was inaugurated king of Israel in Hebron. So then he is first anointed by the prophet at the commandment of God as a token he was chosen. Secondly, by the commandment of the people when he was established king, and so that kings may already remember that it was from God, but by the people and for the people's sake that they reign, and that in their glory they don't say, as is their custom, they hold their kingdom only by God and their sword, but also add that it was the people who first gave them that sword. The same order offered in Solomon. Although he was the king's son, God had chosen Solomon to sit upon the throne of his kingdom, and by explicit words had promised David to be with him and assist him as a father his son. David had with his own mouth designated Solomon to be his successor to the crown in the presence of some of the principal men of his court. This was not enough, and therefore David assembled at Jerusalem the princes of Israel, the heads of the tribes, the captains of the soldiers, and ordnance officers of the kings, the centurions, and other magistrates of towns, together with his sons, the noblemen and worthiest personages of the kingdom, to consult and resolve upon the election. In this assembly, after they had called upon the name of God, Solomon, by the consent of the whole congregation, was proclaimed and anointed as king, and sat upon the throne of Israel. 1 Corinthians 28-29. Then, and not before, the princes, the noblemen, his brothers themselves, to do him homage and take the oath of allegiance, and so that it may not be said that that was only done to avoid the disputes which might arise among the brothers and sons of David about the succession. We read that the other following kings have, in the same manner, been established in their places. It is said that after the death of Solomon, the people assembled to create his son Rehoboam king. 1 King 12. After Amaziah was killed, 2 Corinthians 25:25, Azariah, his only son, was chosen king by all the people. 2 Corinthians 26:1. Ahaziah Ahaziah